What's up, guys? Today we have the Viva, the long-awaited Viva. We're going to be talking about what were the long-term implications of the Congress system. So let's get into this Viva, because I've been waiting to write this for weeks now. Now we're here. And so although the Congress of Vienna can be seen as the end of the French Reign of Terror, in fact, the implications of the Congress were just the beginnings of something completely new, a new political system which was founded. And the three implications of the Congress system are: first, a conservative political order; second, the 1848 revolutions, I should say; and then thirdly, the legacy of symmetry. And before we get into this wonderful Congress system, let's go back in time in our little time machine and talk about how the Congress of Vienna came to be. So as the Enlightenment spread, it really influenced places like the America and places like France, and they had revolutions, obviously trying to escape from the monarchy and establish new forms of government, all influenced majorly by the Enlightenment. Now the French, they kind of took it really far, and during their revolution, after their revolution, there began a reign of terror in which Napoleon takes control of France and really takes over Europe. Nobody really likes it. Nobody's happy with Napoleon. And it's this time of bloodshed and a lot of war going on. And then finally, the people win against Napoleon, and he's defeated after years of his reign of terror. And then people have to come together and decide how they're going to fix Europe. And they do that at the Congress of Vienna. And a lot of world leaders, big leaders, the heads of countries and nations, come together and meet at the Congress of Vienna, and they decide a bunch of stuff. And one of the things they decide leads us to our first point, which is they establish a conservative political order. And this is the first lasting impact that we see from the Congress of Vienna. So after the Napoleonic Reign of Terror, European leaders assembled and they founded a conservative political order. They did this because there had been so much, the Enlightenment had so impacted how everyone viewed government. They kind of had to come back together and decide what kind of governments are going to be in Europe, basically. And during this Congress, they kind of squashed any further revolutions from happening in Europe, and this is all due to the conservative political order which they founded. And as I was kind of touching on earlier, the Enlightenment was a rather progressive political movement, and it was replaced by the Congress. The Congress decided was going to be a conservative government structure based on conservative moral values. And in founding this political order, a lot of things happened, and some of the effects of this political order were the suppression of academic freedom and what else? Academic freedom, and freedom in the press. And we can kind of see what the conservative political order was looking at the Holy Alliance. And it shows us the morals that we can see through the Holy Alliance. We see the morals that were behind the conservative order. In the Holy Alliance, it states, confirmation, quote, of the Holy Scriptures, which command all men to consider each other brethren. The monarch will lead their people to protect religion, peace, and justice, end quote. So that's from the Holy Alliance Treaty, and we see those conservative political, moral values, I should say. And yeah, conservative order really tried to maintain itself in European politics, and it did this through suppressing the academic freedoms and freedom for education, and kind of tried to make sure everyone was following those same rigid guidelines to keep and maintain the conservative political order. And we have this guy whose name is Metternich, and he is an Austrian foreign minister. And he wanted to gather the Congress after the Congress of Vienna. He wanted to keep gathering every year and try to balance power out through that gathering. And yeah, Metternich really wanted to make sure that the conservative political order was maintained. And he said, kind of proudly, he said, quote, "I hope to defeat the German revolutionaries as I defeated the conqueror of the world." And by conqueror of the world, he's speaking of Napoleon, obviously. So Metternich sets up secret police to do this, to maintain the conservative order. And these police look through people's mail. They kind of do a bunch of spy stuff, and they kind of make sure, keep an eye on everyone, all those academics. They keep an eye on those guys, and they make sure that everybody's maintaining status quo, and that there's no nationalist stuff going on. Nobody's spreading those political ideas. And yeah, that's what Metterich's secret police do in Germany. And he kind of has a big impact on German politics because of all these acts that he establishes. He also censors the press as well as academia and all that stuff. So yeah, that's how we see the conservative political order, which came from the Congress system. And then the second thing we're going to look at is the 1848 revolutions. And these revolutions were in response to the very conservative political order. And a lot of young people from these universities were tired of being suppressed, tired of being told what to believe in terms of their politics. And universities become this hub, like they always have been, of new ideas. And in this time frame in which there was a conservative political order, the students at universities kind of group together in nationalist movements, and they decide, hey, we don't like this conservative political order. And so these revolutions start in Sicily, and they move throughout Italy, they move to France, they move to Germany and Austria. But yet, even with these revolutions, the conservative political order sticks. It doesn't change European landscape, and so a lot of these liberal nationalists, they go over to America because Europe is unshaken by these revolutions. And Stella Gervis says, quote, "The Congress system ended in 1823, when the great powers stopped meeting regularly. Yet, the one-block system went on for 3 decades. It survived the revolutions of 1848. So we can kind of see political order sticks. And yeah, in Metterich's attempts to thwart any liberal government, he really angers the German people. And Dr. Parker says in slide 40 that, quote, "For many in Germany, Metternich became a hated symbol of reaction and repression," end quote. So university students and professors didn't really like this guy because of his suppressive ideas, and Yeah, and Metternich saw these people as the danger to his political order because they were spreading nationalist ideas. And one interesting thing about this nationalist movement is the Turners, who were a group started by, what's his name? Friedrich Ludwig Jahn. And the Turners were, they were increasingly involved in the national political movement, but fundamentally they were gymnasts. We gotta love the gymnast. But yeah, they were started by Friedrich Ludwig Jahn, and yeah, they were a bunch of young university students. It's kind of like a club. They were all nationalist, but even then, conservative political order kind of stuck in Europe. And then the third implication of the Congress system can be seen through the legacy of symmetry. And this is probably the biggest takeaway from the Congress system, is that, yeah, symmetry lasted to this day and really informs our global politics that we have. And basically, definition for symmetry is diplomacy at the highest levels. So the highest level leaders are meeting together, discussing problems, figuring stuff out, making treaties, instead of just sending ambassadors, low-level ambassadors to countries and figuring stuff out. And that's how it was done before the Congress of Vienna. Is ambassadors would be sent country to country, and they would talk to each other and figure stuff out. But the problem with that system is that there was a lot of misrepresentation that goes on in that system, because they're only ambassadors and they could have personal agendas that they want to go through, and they may not represent the leaders at the highest level well. And so the Congress of Vienna comes along, and it's all of the highest of the political leaders from all these different countries and nations, and they go through a bunch of stuff, make treaties, get stuff done. There's no more misrepresentation. Yeah. And there's a lasting legacy of this symmetry, and it can be seen in the founding of stuff like international laws, the League of Nations, and the G7. So, from slide 61, Dr. Parker states that the Congress impacts go beyond symmetry and more broadly, quote, the idea of leaders from different countries meeting to decide political issues like a parliament left a lasting impact on the realm of international relations, end quote. Yeah, so we're seeing lasting impacts even today, and we're going to just talk about the G7, which is a summit of leaders who meet in 7 countries, and they meet once a year to kind of discuss problems in the world. And it began in the 1970s when there was the oil shock, and countries' economies were all struggling. So a group of countries came together to kind of say, hey, what can we do about this? Let's talk through this. Let's help each other. And so that's how the G7 was founded. And today it includes the countries of France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United States, and the UK and Canada. And it meets together to discuss a lot of humanitarian problems and political problems. And then the G20 is a larger group, a larger summit of world leaders that includes 20 countries, and it discusses economic issues. And yeah, we see the legacy of symmetry in that, and the League of Nations as well, and the founding of international law. So yeah, that is the legacy of the Congress system. Week, well, I don't know what week it is, but probably like 6 or 7. Anyway, I hope that you're enjoying this beautiful weather today, really soaking up the sunshine and the leaves and the beauty. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in for another of Esperanzas Vivas. Bye.